Hi, my name's Natasha and this video is all about reading phase 2 to 5. If you're new here and haven't yet watched the two-part video on phase 1 and how essential this is to the teaching of reading, please exit this video and go and watch that first. If you're here as a year 1 or year 2 teacher or a parent of a 5 or 6-year-old, please don't make the mistake in thinking that phase 1 is not for you. Phase 1 is essential to children throughout their primary years, and if you haven't yet included this in your teaching or given your children enough of an experience in phase 1, the strategies I'm going to go through today will not be as effective. So we're going to get started now on reading phase 2 to 5, and I'm going to be using all of the technical vocabulary that the children need to hear. If you're not sure why the children need to know this vocabulary and why I expect them to use it, go and have a look at the video all about phonics and the vocab. Another question I'm asked time and time again is which phonics scheme I would recommend. I don't believe I'm here to tell you that one is better than another. In fact, there are so many on the market it would be impossible to do so. I've used many of the most common phonics schemes over the years, and I always end up writing my own for the school that I'm in. What I believe is the most important thing about teaching phonics and getting the best from the children is teacher knowledge and understanding, the methods and strategies you use, and the passion you have when you're teaching children to read and write. Can you inspire, engage and excite the children? Because if you're not passionate when you're teaching children to read and write, it won't matter what scheme you use. If you have a desire to get the very best out of your phonics children, that will be the thing that makes your children succeed. So once I feel the children are ready to move on to phase 2 and have an excellent phase 1 foundation, I don't then forget all about phase 1. I still build these games into our days and also through child-teacher interactions when it's child-initiated play. So my phonics sessions are daily and they're at the beginning of every day when the children are most alert and awake. And each session is rigorous and makes sure that it involves all the elements of rehearsing, recapping, application, learning, applying and a challenge. Each day I make sure the children learn a new phoneme grapheme correspondence. Remember, that is where the children look at a s and know it makes the sound s. It's also really important that the children have an action. Most phonics schemes these days have an action assigned to the phoneme they are learning. This means children with various learning styles can access the new phonemes. Another element that's crucial in your teaching of phonics is to make sure you pronounce your phonemes correctly without that sound at the end, such as s, not s, and p, not p. If you are working with an adult who's not using pure sounds and you hear this, make sure that you train your adult so that you're all delivering phonics in the same way. This is another reason I ensure that parents have a phonics meeting right at the beginning of the year, because if the children are hearing one thing from you and then go home and their parents are pronouncing those phonemes incorrectly, the children will get confused. For some children this takes an awfully long time, so it's crucial that we are constantly carrying on those phase 1 games. However, if the majority of the cohort are ready to start on phase 2, I wouldn't leave those children behind. I would make sure that they are looking at all of the phoneme grapheme correspondences that the rest of the children will be looking at too. Because if they carry on looking at those phonemes and recognise even just half of them, when they come to be able to blend, they will have some phonemes to actually rehearse with. I have my continuous provision out and myself and my teaching assistant go and interact with the children. All of this time the children through play are developing their phoneme grapheme correspondences, their ability to blend and segment, and learning to read and write in a peaceful, safe and happy environment. As I said in my vocabulary training video, I believe teaching the children the language is absolutely crucial and actually a really useful teaching resource. So teach the elements such as digraph, trigraph, blend, phoneme and grapheme, because the children actually really love it and pick up on it a lot easier than most adults would. If you're still unsure how to use the language as a teaching strategy and resource, please watch the previous video. Right now we're moving on to strategies and methods in teaching the skill of decoding. Reading is incredibly complex, so learning to read is such a difficult task for children. I want to go through practical ideas of how you can teach all of the different skills involved in decoding, but before I start that, let's have a look at them. I just want to point out here that whilst we're looking at the skills of decoding, throughout the whole time we're teaching those skills, phase 1 is ongoing through games and activities, songs and things that you can do through child-initiated play. I also want to think about the tricky words. Those are the words that children just need to look at and know. All words can be sounded out, but these ones are just that little bit more tricky, and it's easier to just look at them and know them by sight. So whilst we look at the skills of decoding, I want you to bear in mind that phase 1 and tricky words are ongoing along the side of this teaching. So let's have a look at these. 1. Listening and hearing. 2. Oral blending. 3. Phoneme and grapheme correspondences. 4. Blending. 5. Knowing what a word is. 6. Reading captions. 7. Reading simple sentences. 8. The ability to blend in your head. 9. Reading adjacent consonants. And 10. Reading polysyllabic words. Now, for every child is completely different, and it may be that they get one element of this before they get another. Let's have a look now at practical ideas and strategies to get all of these skills into your teaching. Number 1, listening and hearing. They're the same thing, right? Actually, no. We all know those children who can hear everything that's going on around them, and if they hear the word sweets, they'll be there in a flash. What we want though is children who can really truly listen and tune in to the things that they hear around them. I'm going to give you 2 ideas now about how you can develop the children's ability to listen and really tune in to what they are listening to. The first idea is about distinguishing between sounds that sound really similar. Now, this is not about the grapheme, this is not about the letters. This is purely about children hearing the difference between 2 similar sounds. So later on down the line, when the children are getting f and th the wrong way round, games like this will help. So we'll use f and th as an example. Remember, this is not to do with the letters that make those phonemes, it's purely about the sound. So children, every time you hear me make the sound f, I want you to pretend you're a fish and swim around in the sea. And every time you hear me make the sound I want you to give me a thumbs up. Are you ready?
This kind of game could form a phase 1 phonics session, a PE warm-up, or just a silly game to play in the playground.
And you can play that game with similar sounds like and even sounds that sound nothing alike if the children are just in the early stages of really starting to tune in and listen. This game is called Listen, Repeat, and I'm going to clap a beat and then the children are going to repeat it, but not with their hands, they're going to use their mouth. So if they have the beat, ba, 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 ba. Now you can change the sound that they make. It might be a breathy sound, a high sound, a low sound, and you can change it up as much as you like. But it's all about being able to listen to that beat, retain the sound that they heard in their head so they're really tuned in and listening, and then transferring that out of their mouth, a reading skill that will be used later on.
Number 2, oral blending.
Storytelling baskets is an easy game to set up. As long as you have a basket full of objects that are easily recognisable to children, you can play this from as young as 2 years old. So we all sit down ready for a story, but there's no book because we're going to make up the story as we go along. There once was a boy called Tom, and he felt really lonely. So he decided to go and look for a friend. He met a dog. And see if the children can find the dog in the basket and get it out as one of the props.
So once you've invited the children to find the missing part of the story that they need to blend, they are involved in the story making too.
The dog was called Sam. Sam was lonely too, but he said he had found a new friend over in the field. He really wanted to talk to him, but he didn't feel brave enough. So together they went to find the cow. So then the children get out the cow, and you get the idea. The children will be so engrossed in the story that they probably won't even notice that they're blending, but they are rehearsing that oral blending skill whilst having fun, feeling safe, happy and secure. Nursery rhyme baskets are a must in every classroom I've ever had. I always have a basket full of props so that the children can just pick one out and we sing the nursery rhyme. How can you link this to oral blending? Well, at the very early stages of blending, it's better to use stories, nursery rhymes that the children are familiar with. So when you're singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, how I wonder what you are, up above the world so high. High, like a diamond in the sky. And you can miss out the words and segment them where the children blend them back together. The fact that those rhymes are so familiar will aid the children in that blending skill. And when in doubt, with oral blending, singing is fantastic. Singing helps it all blend together that little bit more because you're holding the notes. And no, I'm not going to sing right now because that is one thing I'm definitely not doing on this video. Phoneme and grapheme correspondences. As with most phonics schemes, the best way to teach this is making sure that they have an action to go with them. If the children are learning the sound and the representation, the physical representation of what it looks like, with an action, they're more likely to remember it. So that's why most schemes now use that. So remember, phoneme grapheme correspondences are where we know that the shape makes the sound For me, the best way to make sure that children recognise their phoneme and grapheme correspondences is making sure they come into contact with it in their play and everyday experiences. Whether they be invitations to play, whether they be areas that you set up for the children to look at like sensory tubs or tough spots, it doesn't matter, as long as the children are exposed to lots of opportunities to see those phoneme and grapheme correspondences in a non-stressful, non-pressured way, the children will remember them. Playing games like bingo are great as a whole class and the children really enjoy them. So when you give them a phoneme board and their phonics board, it might be that you have all of the phonemes they've learned so far in phase 2, and it might simply be that you say S as in sun, P as in panda, and they cover those over. Or it might be that you challenge the children by showing them a picture of a sausage and seeing if they can cover over the S. Or again, you could change it up by saying a word like teddy and seeing if they can hear that. So there are lots of different variations of bingo and lots of different fun ways that you can have set up in your environment for the children to make sure that they get lots and lots of exposure to those phoneme and grapheme correspondences.
When learning their GPCs, it's crucial that children hear and share lots of stories. They have a language-rich environment and encouraged to look for letters and sounds all around them, whether that's at school, in their sensory tubs, or when shopping with their parents.
Number 4, blending. We had already talked about oral blending, and that's a skill where they can just blend sounds that they hear into words. Whereas this blending is where we are looking at the phoneme grapheme correspondences and they are looking at those and blending those into words. So this is the next stage of blending. That's why phase 1 oral blending is so crucial, because once they get to this phase, if they can already blend, then this will be the easy bit. So it's really important that we all use sound buttons under each of those graphemes. D, og, d, og, dog. And you can see there that when you say the sounds purely, it's easier to blend. It's also important that we use the dashes for our digraphs. Ch, a, n, ch, a, n. So this reminds the children that this is not a k, but a ch. So two letters together making one sound, the digraph. And then here with our trigraph, n, I, t, night. And as I talked about in the vocabulary video, it's really useful for the children to know the terms digraph and trigraph, because if they come across a word in a book that doesn't have sign buttons under, and you understandably don't want to deface the book and write in it, then just by saying to the children, look out for the digraphs in that word, they will automatically be drawn into the ch and the a. And I promise you, after years of teaching children to do this, it really does work. Now, there will always be those children who find blending really quite difficult and it doesn't come to them very easily. So for those children, keep them involved in all of the phonics sessions that you are doing, but it might be worthwhile doing interventions and extra bits with them in smaller groups or one-to-one. And I'm going to give you a couple of ideas now about how you might get those children to practice blending in an easy, fun and simple way. So give those children a sentence like, I have a cat. And the children are more likely to blend it when it's within a context. On the whiteboard here, you may see that I have got some little characters. This little character here is Mr. I. And each of these characters is a vowel and has a vowel on there to me. And Mr. I likes to make the phoneme I. And his arms are super stretchy, so when he stretches his arms out, he touches different phonemes either side. So if there's one on this side, he might be touching a p, and on this side he might be touching a n. And as his arms are stretchy, we say it slowly. P, in, p, in, p, in, p, in. And as the arms come in, the children blend quicker and eventually can blend that it's pin. It's a fun tactile way and the children like them because they're squidgy and sticky. Number 5, knowing what a word is. I'm very lucky throughout my career to have worked with lots of colleagues in different schools, delivering insets and training and one-to-one support. Time after time, knowing what a word is one aspect that teachers say, oh, I hadn't thought about that. So that's why I always bring it up in my training sessions. So knowing what a word is crucial before the children start reading captions and sentences. And the reason is, without knowing what a word is, the children will just keep on saying the phonemes and not knowing where to stop before they blend them. Knowing what a word is crucial also for writing. So this game is a really simple idea about developing the children's ability to know what constitutes a single word. As I don't have a class of children with me, we're going to pretend that these vowel characters are my class lining up to go to lunch. And as I go down the line, I'm going to tap them on the head and they have to say a word of the nursery rhyme, but they're only allowed to say one word. Now, there will be those children who try to say a cluster of words, and that will be because they're not sure yet what constitutes one single word. So they'll find it funny when it's a really short word. Play this game often enough and the children will catch on to it very quickly. So we'll do bar, bar, black sheep. Bar, bar, black sheep. Have you any wool? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 3 bags full. And you can see there how you have to move quite quickly and you can go back down the line and back up again. Another thing is it's practicing nursery rhymes, and that is always a good thing. Number 6, reading captions. Now this is a really great way to introduce the children to finger spaces. Not only am I passionate about all things phonics, I'm an English lead in my school too, so everything to do with English is a huge passion of mine. Reading makes children better at English, and that's because so many of the literary skills that the children need to have can be exemplified whilst reading. So introducing the children to finger spaces when they are reading captions is a simple and easy way to do it. So let's look at this caption here. It is art hot. I will always then get the children to go back to the beginning and say it as a whole caption where they're not blending. You will have those children that do the blending again, but keep trying to go back and say it as a whole, because in the end you want them to say, it is hot. Number 7, reading sentences. As with reading captions, this is a great time to introduce punctuation. So here is our opportunity to introduce capital letters and full stops, and then also reiterate finger spaces. This is also the time that we can start to really focus on the importance of tricky words or sight words. So when we come across those, I just do a little action, that's a sight word, just pointing to your eyes just to remind them, signal to them that that's not one that they sound out, it's a sight word. He got at up top. So the children have blended that, and then I say go back and read it again. He got a top. Oh, I'll always ask a question like, what did he get? And then the children say, he got a top. And that shows me they've not only blended and decoded their sentence, they've actually understood what they have read. If they look at you blankly, they're not reading for meaning yet, so that's something you need to work on. Sight word, the and man. Sight word was sad. Sad. Why? And then I don't elaborate and say, why was the man sad? I just ask the question, why? Because again, it will show me their understanding of what they have just read. Simple questions like that will give you an idea of whether they're actually taking on board what they are reading.
At this early stage, don't worry about the deep and meaningful questions. Just get a basic idea to see if they've understood and digested what they have read, or whether they have simply decoded the words.
Number 8, blending in your head. I believe you'll know when children are ready to start blending in their head, but if they're reading like this, it is hot in the mud, really speedily and really quite quickly, recognising their tricky words, they're actually ready to blend in their head. And this is a skill that again people think comes naturally, and it does, but it should be encouraged for those children who are reading like that. When they're reading like that, they're going to take less of the understanding on board. So this is an area I say, you are now ready to start blending in your head, and I want to see you do it. If the children are struggling with that, you can give them a strategy of nodding. So they have a look at words like this, and instead of saying hot, they're going to do this, hot. And just doing that signals to the children that they're still using the same skill, still sounding each phoneme, but they're just nodding to indicate it rather than actually saying it. And that usually works quite well. When you've got two children who are ready to start blending in their head, you can play the blending burst game where they have to look at the sound mad and say it as fast as they can. They just burst out with that phoneme, and children who are at this stage usually really enjoy this game. Some of them might get so excited that the phonemes just burst out of their mouths, but it's a really good, exciting game to play, and it's quite simple. Number 9, reading adjacent consonants. It's really important to note here that sometimes children start to call these digraphs, and so too do parents at times. So even though these phonemes come really closely together when we say them within a word, like k and st, they're still two individual separate phonemes, so they still have individual sound buttons underneath, whereas this is a digraph, two letters together making one sound, so those are not the same as these. I've heard teachers using little images like digraphs holding hands and things like that. I personally just teach the children that it's a digraph, and I don't have images like that. Not to say that that's wrong, it's just not something that I do. I would encourage you though, if you are teaching that digraphs hold hands, I would actually teach them that digraphs are hugging, because that is closer. Okay, so if the digraphs are hugging, oh, how cute is that? Two letters together making one sound, and that one's O. I would teach them that adjacent consonants are holding hands because they're a little bit further apart, but they are still in contact with each other. So that's just a little suggestion there. If you did want to use those images with the children, I would suggest digraphs are hugging and adjacent consonants are holding hands. Number 10, polysyllabic words. Now this is another element where phase 1 will come into its own. If you have done lots of rhythms and beats and working on syllables through those, this will come a lot easier to children. First of all, when children are ready to start reading words like this one on the top, it's important to teach the parents when working with their children to cover the first half of the word, the second half of the word up, so that they can sound the first half. Lap, lap. Then cover up that part of the word and do the next bit. Top, top. Then they are blending the two parts together. So we had lap and we had top, then we're pushing it together, laptop. And then the children can clap that, laptop, so that they're getting used again to clapping those syllables. When you come to these words here, these are obviously a lot longer, and those will be the words they start reading in phase 5. So again, you could break those words up and you could get a highlighter pen and you highlight the different parts. I haven't got a highlighter pen on my whiteboard. And we can see we've broken that up into syllables, and the children with different colour highlighters can read information, information. And you can see there how blending is still really important for children much further up the school in their reading journey. And then finally, fantastic, fantastic. So getting the children used to breaking up words to blend is a really, really simple way to get children to read those polysyllabic words. Another little game you can play with this is you could have a selection of words like I have on here, and you clap and say, which word could I be clapping? When the children realise that it's got 3 syllables in, they know it can't be laptop because that's only got 2. They know then it must be fantastic because it's got 3 syllables. And they are games that you will play with children in year 1 and 2. Split digraphs. So if we think of our friends giving each other a hug here, we've got an I and an E making the phoneme I. Now this is how I teach the first one. So we've got here I as in tie. Now the next time we teach these 2 letters together, they have been separated, but they still want to hold on to each other. So this represents our split digraph I. And you can see there a little loop, which is a really important symbol for the children. So when I'm teaching this, I would have my I on here, teaching the children we've got our split digraph. And then I would put my letters in the right place. R, I, D, ride. R, I, D, ride. And then you can see how those 2 letters, even though they are split, are making one sound. It's a split digraph. And you can use this concept and this imagery for the children for all of the split digraphs. So when you come to read other split digraphs within words like a, k, you could do your sound buttons and your loop like you've taught to the children, a, k, or you could even just use your finger, a, d, made. And it's a really visual way for the children to understand what a split digraph is.
Bonus idea number 1. Gather some toys that are a CVC word like dog, pig, man. Hide them within a ball of Play-Doh and leave it next to a group of words written down. Encourage the children to unravel the secret words inside the ball and see if they can match the object to the word. Put some tricky words on splat and stick them to a wall. Encourage the children to kick them, hit them, tap them, bump them with their bottom, make it fun and make it physical. Create a nursery rhyme bag with an iPad and watch the children create their own nursery rhyme videos. Combine learning tricky words with physical activities like throwing and aiming at a target. Using those CVC toys and some wooden letters, the adult says all of the phonemes within the word like pig, and the children put them in the right order and then make an indentation in the Play-Doh. It's tactile, it's fun, and it's a nice way to introduce which way round letters go. I'm sincerely hoping that you've enjoyed this training video and have new ideas to take away with you. If you have enjoyed it, then please share my Facebook page, my Instagram page, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, all under the name The Phonics Queen. Thank you, and I hope to see you again soon.